Armor of Truth, live. Is resistance.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth. Faith is resistance. Against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We're back with you once again. Here's a poll question for you today to get started so we can prime the pump and get things moving. It's a question that, at least where I am in the world right now, it seems like a strange question to ask because I don't mean to act like nothing's coming around the corner, because we know something's coming around the corner, but around here things are quite normal. It feels a lot like it did 5 years ago. All right. Maybe not completely, but I think there are pockets of the world that are like that right now, and then some other places in the world that are just not. Some places that are heavily restricted right now, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. We're going to look at take a trip around the world and see what's happening around the world. And that's why this poll question today is: your town or city, wherever you might be in the world, and folks watch this from all over the place, all over the world, is your city or town, your area or your region, are you still under restrictions? And so far, if you want to vote in this poll, by the way, I'll put the link to vote in this poll in the live chat. It's in there. It's pinned to the top of the live chat. So if you're using your phone or your tablet or your device, maybe your laptop, you can get to that very easily. Otherwise, you can navigate to the community tab on this YouTube channel and find that community. Find this poll question there, and please go over there, vote in this poll, and let us know what you think. Give us some commentary. So far, 45 people. We put this out just a few minutes before the show. 45 folks have weighed in on this, and look at this. Maybe we're not getting many folks, European viewers right now at this time of day. I don't know, but so 98% of you who have participated in this poll so far are in a place where the city is either open with no restrictions or open with some restrictions. 2% of you have said my city is currently in a lockdown. So we know there are places in the world right now where, there are probably more severe lockdowns than were at any time in 2020. So 50 votes are in now. It's exactly the same ratio. Let's look at some of the comments. Emma Peel says, I stopped wearing a mask the minute I saw that some stores had quietly taken down the mandated signs. Most workers still wear them. She says, I guess it's company policy. I see more and more people without masks, but still way too many. This has really messed many people up. As you folks know, I'll be having to, since we're over here on this platform today, even your comments, I'll be having to edit myself as I speak to you. We'll talk more in just a minute about how you can watch us without the muzzle, without being restrained. I'll tell you where you can join us for those shows in just a moment. Nelson R. says, small town Ontario, Canada here, still have mask mandates there. Crystal Goin says, where I live, they stopped requiring the proof, and now you can go without a mask based on the honor system. I think that's probably the way it is most places right now. And I have to say I'm really glad for that, at least. It says, funny, the ones doing this, the world have no honor themselves. We just went to the fair and only 2 people were wearing them. Interesting. Seems to be pretty much the same way here. Michael Guimond says, shockingly, Portland has no restrictions in July, waiting for the variant restrictions to come in autumn. Mama G, thank you, Mama G, for your comment and your support. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Michigan cities and metropolitan areas are open, but still a lot of people wearing the mask. I wish I can't. I used to be able to say this, but I can't say it here anymore. Honestly, she says, honestly, I don't care anymore. The powers that be have been successful in this control and with these tactics. I don't even know if there's a hope for those. I still think there's a threat. Believing that the threat is still there to stay forever. She says it gets really frustrating to try to wake people up. Yeah, and especially for those of you who are working in healthcare to some degree, it's got to be interesting. Little Gozy says, no, answering the question, is your city in lockdown? Says no, but I know that by next school year, the amount of stuff is going to be crazy. And I know that I'm going to have a problem with these people because I ain't going to give in. I hear you. Eddie Vasquez says, I live in California. All right, so that says it all. All right, so we'll come back over here and check on some more comments. Go to this poll. Follow the link that's pinned to the top of the live chat. Or you can scroll back in the live chat. I'll put the link in there. Go over there and give us a vote. Let us know what's going on where you live. 54 people in now. We're still looking at 98% of you who are participating have not, are somewhere where there are little to no restrictions. Interesting. All right. Greetings, my friends. Welcome. It's good to see you, folks. We've been away. Some of you were kind enough to ask about. We weren't no shows last week, and some of you were asking about where we were. What happened? Did something happen? No, nothing happened. Thankfully, nothing happened. We were just on a vacation, a honeymoon, more specifically. So there's that, and I am glad, I was happy to be back here, but, you know, that was a nice break. And let me remind you, folks, let's look at this. Let's look over here for a second. I want to remind you, if you would like to get, we've got a new shipment of different tracks coming in now that we'll have available for these care packages, we like to call them, which is if you would like to have a Bible. You want one, you don't have one, or you want to get one to give to someone, go ahead and send us a message. Send us an email at this new email address. Pay close attention because we have a new email address for requesting Bibles, and it's there on your screen now, hello@armoroftruth.net. If you will email us at hello@armoroftruth.net, that's also where we will receive general inquiries, words of support, words of criticism, whatever you might like, but also Bible requests. Send them to hello@armoroftruth.net, and we'll send you, if you don't specify which one, we'll send you a King James version with a very good, very useful King James. It's actually called the King James Bible Companion. It's got 600 of the archaic words defined in it, because you find a lot of words in the KJV that are not used anymore. And it's good to have this. It'll fit right in your Bible. It's thin. It's got 600 words, and it shows where those words appear in the Bible. And also, if you would rather, you can request an English Standard Version that has a little bit larger print. We still have some of those to give out as well. So there you go. hello@armoroftruth.net. This is part of our outreach here, and we're very blessed and glad to be able to do that. All right. And also, you want to send us a word of support or criticism via snail mail. Maybe you want to send in a donation. That way you can do that as well. If you decide to send one in with a check, you can just make it out to Armor of Truth, and that will work just fine. And you do that by writing us at Armor of Truth, P.O. Box 729, Hudson, NC 28638. So reach out to us. We like to get those. And big thanks to Miss Amanda Crotty for sending us a very nice package in the mail with some very good-looking English Standard Version Bibles, a couple hardcovers, some soft covers. Good ones, folks. Good ones. We appreciate that, Amanda, very much. And that's how we do it, folks. This whole thing, ministry is corporate. We do it together. And we certainly appreciate your support. There are links in the description if you'd like to support us. You can follow those links and do that. They'll also be popping up in the live chat. Hopefully, if Streamlabs is doing its job, they'll pop up in the live chat, and you can find those links to support us directly there. Okay, also, over here on our Facebook page, check us out on facebook.com/Armor of Truth Ministry. You can find us, Armor of Truth Ministry, on Facebook. We're searchable over there. And, of course, here's the big news. Here's some good news for you this week. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise on Friday evening. Tentatively, I'll let you know for sure, but tentatively at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we'll be live on the website, not on the YouTube channel this time. We'll be back together on YouTube soon. We'll be doing that. The Virtual Abyss is coming. We'll be doing it together. But before that, myself and our brother Days of Noor, we're going to get together on the website. That is armoroftruth.net. If you go to armoroftruth.net, let me show you what that looks like. I should have had that ready, shouldn't I? There, that's what it looks like. If you go to armoroftruth.net, you can actually watch our last live stream from Wednesday 2 Wednesdays ago. Where we gave away the biggest secret of Agenda 21. You can go check that out. This is uncensored, folks. There are no restrictions over here. And it will be live streamed there again on Friday. Join us over there, 6 p.m. Eastern. Myself and Days of Noah, where we're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about. And not be worried about who might be listening and what they might think about it, because they can't reach us there. Okay? So if you want to hear myself and Days of Noah unbridled, nothing working without a net. Come over there and check us out Friday, 6 p.m. I'll let you know for sure if that time changes. And, of course, our poll question once again today. There it is. We've got a few more votes in. It's still holding fast at 98% of you. Is your town or city still under restrictions, lockdown? Are you in lockdown at the moment? Any kind, any level of lockdown? And 98% of you are saying no. 2% of you are saying yes. It's interesting. Daniel. Here we go. Daniel, who's coming to us from an undisclosed location inside Europe. He says, after 1.5 years without any chance to travel home to Norway, I'm finally going back, Lord willing, of course, in 1 month to Norway. But when I come back into Slovakia a couple of weeks later, I will have to report to police where I will stay. In short, my home will be a prison for 5 days before I'm allowed to go out for a PCR test and be declared negative. Police checks could occur regularly these 5 days. If I'm not at home, I will get a huge fine. So there you go. Thank you for sharing that, Daniel. That's what we're looking for. Getting experiences around the world, see what's going on out there. Thank you, brother, for sharing that. And I do feel for you on that front. But I'm very glad that you're getting to go back and visit your people. Michael Swain says here in Amarillo, Texas, there's no restrictions that I know of, besides some businesses having employees wear masks. Pixie Doodle says, live in Kentucky. No restrictions that I'm aware of, but the media recently reported that the numbers are going up. Yeah, that happens too. So thank you for those comments. If you've got a story you want to tell us about what's going on in your area, let us know, because it's really interesting what's happening in the world today. Some places, like where I happen to be, myself and my wife Summer happen to be, we're very blessed to not be experiencing any restrictions that we're aware that are on. And then you've got stories like what Brother Daniel in Slovakia has just reported, where it certainly sounds like a police state. At least temporarily. I don't know. The toothpaste doesn't usually go back in the tube. The genie doesn't really go back in the bottle once out, so I'm not sure some of these things are ever going to go away. But, over here on this platform, we have to be careful about how we discuss it. And we will. We'll be careful because we intend to stay present here on this platform, because this is where all the people are. But, as I said a moment ago, please join us Friday, 6 p.m. Myself and Days of Noah will be talking about whatever we want to talk about. And that's going to be good. That's going to be fun. Also, I'll be doing an uncensored stream on the website also on Wednesday. On Wednesday at 6 p.m. That's tomorrow, right? So we'll be talking about some of these things tomorrow, and we'll be able to speak freely about it. So you'll want to be there with us tomorrow at 6 p.m. at armoroftruth.net. And then for Friday at 6 p.m., armoroftruth.net. That's where we'll be doing our collaboration with Days. All right. Now let's talk about what it is we're dealing with here today. We're going to take a trip around the world, as we've done a little bit here with the poll question so far. And we're going to find out what's happening, take the pulse of the world. Because as many of you have indicated, you're not experiencing anything unusual that much at the moment. Things appear to have gone back to normal in some places, but in other places, it's just gotten more strict than it ever was. And why do we talk about this on this channel? This YouTube channel is an outreach. It's my personal YouTube channel, of course, but I am involved in ministry here in Western North Carolina, and so whatever I talk about here is going to be ministry related in some way. But so what's relevant about this issue? How does it relate to the gospel? Well, we're always talking about here developing a proper scriptural cultural theology. And what does that mean? That just means that is truth applied to your life. Applied truth. That is a proper scriptural cultural theology. What that means is Jesus Christ is Lord of all of your life. Not just your life when you're sitting in church, and not just your life when you happen to be praying, but at all times. So that means we have to think about For example, this is an example I use. How do we think about technology? How do we develop a proper scriptural cultural theology about technology? Because the Bible doesn't talk about technology as per se. So how do we think of it? Well, the Bible does talk about wealth. And so if we apply what the Bible says about wealth, and we can see that technology is a form of wealth, it's a result of progress and growth, affluence even. So if we look at what the Bible says about wealth, it's not money that's the root of all evil. It would be the love of money. So change that word money to technology. And how do we think about technology? Technology is not evil. Some of the people employing it are. We can use technology like we're doing right now to do good. We can use technology to spread the Word of God, the gospel of Jesus Christ all over the world. And that's what we're doing here. So it's not the technology. It's not wealth that's evil. It's the heart. It's the heart of man. As Jeremiah 17 tells us that our heart is desperately wicked. We need to be aware of that. And so, for example, also, profession of faith isn't enough. We need to possess it. Professing it is one thing, but you need to possess it. You need to actually have that faith. And how do you get that faith? Become a follower of Jesus Christ and accept Him as Lord of all your life, every area of your life, your recreation life, your work life, all of your life. And as we think about this issue here today, lockdowns and restrictions around the world, how do we think about this? We've talked about this over the last year. Many of you, or some of you probably weren't, we've got a lot of new viewers. Some people come in and stay for a while and move on to other areas or just stop watching. And that's how it works out here on the internet. Some of you may not have heard last year, at the end of last year, and a lot of those videos are gone now because some were removed by YouTube, some we had to take down because they've gotten very strict. And we were speaking pretty boldly the last 6 months of last year. And so we talked about Romans 13 a lot and obeying the authorities. That's what as Christians we're called to do. But Romans 13 in context states that men must obey the authority. Now, the authority here in the United States is the Constitution. It's not a man. It's the Constitution, both federal and state. You have a state constitution as well. So no man, regardless of his elected seat, including the president, whoever he happens to be, no man has authority to command or mandate arbitrary policies. So nowhere in Romans or Peter's epistles does it ever say that you must do whatever they say to do. That's not in there. Obey the authority. So there is a higher authority than man. That would be the Constitution. There's a higher authority than that, and that is the will of God. That is the authority of the Creator. And so keep that in mind as we look through this today. So we're currently at war. Strong words, but it's never been more true. Wars happen in various ways. We're currently in something that's known as a nonlinear warfare. We won't get into that too deeply here because we shan't do that here. But truth must be defended and God's word proclaimed, not only because we're right, but because humanity is now being culled by the forces of darkness, and the Great Commission of making disciples of all nations is our command. Even if it's unpopular, even if it's uncomfortable to do. Wherever God's law is rejected, confusion and debasement will be normalized. So I ask you to look around your world today. Is confusion and debasement being normalized? So it's pretty clear that God's law has been rejected. All right, let's look around here. Let's take a look around the world. Yeah, so this is here's a better version. Time Magazine in June of this year. The June 7th, the June 14th issue of Time Magazine was talking about the reopening, the great reopening. A play on the phrase, the Great Reset, clearly. Talking about, see this little clock. When can we reopen? When can we return to normal? And some of the examples here on this are, let me see, I can make this, let's make this a little bigger for you here so you can see what this little clock says. At 1 o'clock, it says, please get me out of the house. At 2 o'clock, it says, is everyone vaccinated? At 3 o'clock, it says, when my kids are back in school, that's when we return. At 4 o'clock, it says, with my pandemic puppy. At 5 o'clock, it says, wearing sweatpants. 6 o'clock, it says, 3 days a week. 7 o'clock, it says, when my boss goes back. 7 o'clock, it says, are you paying for childcare? 9 o'clock, it says, when I feel valued, we'll return. At 10 o'clock, it says, yes, but in a new career. At 11 o'clock, it says, how about never? And at 12 midnight, it says, we're already here, already there. Well, I don't know. Let's look around the world and see what's happening on this front. So what prompted me to want to do this topic today is Cyprus. Cyprus has now put into effect, I guess, one of the first actual versions or actual, how can we say this over here, passports. So they're calling it Safe Pass. You have to have this and show that you are validated. You have to show proof of your vaccination or proof of that you've recovered in order to do certain things to participate in society. And let's see what some of these articles say. So, grocery shoppers in the Republic of Cyprus may no longer shop at a supermarket. How about that? If they do not have a Safe Pass, based on the latest decree published on Monday by the Health Ministry affecting all domains of social life in response to last week's surge in daily infection. Now, what's crying out for an answer here is, what about your choice? Does choice play a role in this at all? What about those who are not able to receive the vaccination for whatever reason? What about those who choose not to? What happens to them? So, grocery shoppers in the Republic of Cyprus may no longer shop at a supermarket if they do not have a Safe Pass based on the latest decree published on Monday by the Health Ministry affecting all domains of social life in response to last week's surge in daily infections. The Cypriot Health Ministry published a 30-page decree on Monday amending the government's controversial Safe Pass, essentially making rules stricter starting on Tuesday morning on July 20th, that's today, through July 31st. So at the moment, this doesn't appear to be permanent. But as I said earlier, tyrants don't typically give power back. A Safe Pass legally requires people over the age of 12 to have in possession, this is what the Safe Pass is. It requires people over the age of 12 to have in possession physical proof they have been vaccinated with at least one dose 3 weeks prior. So you have to have it, and you have to have the vaccination, and you have to have had it 3 weeks prior, or tested negative, or officially cleared by state authorities no more than 6 months since the last time you tested positive for COVID. 3 stipulations there, and they are these. People over the age of 12. So it seems that children under 12, at least in Cyprus, there are no specific restrictions. I guess maybe you send your 11-year-old out to do the shopping. Is that what you have to do in Cyprus now? Send your 11-year-old to the supermarket? if you don't happen to have this, if you're not validated. Starting Tuesday morning at 5 a.m., retail stores, including supermarkets, are no longer accessible without a Safe Pass or a European Union COVID digital certificate, along with indoor and outdoor spaces where over 20 people can gather when social distancing rules are in place. Safe Pass is not required for mini markets. What about mini malls? Anyway, convenience stores, standalone small shops, or small stores within shopping malls where the total number of people, including employees, does not reach above 20. Why 20? Just a question. I'm not making any commentary about it other than that, but why 20? It's just a good question. Why 20 people? Why not 22? Why not 30? Why not 12? Why not 33? Public transportation is also affected by the general Safe Pass rule, along with dining and entertainment establishments where seated guests may not exceed 10 at each table. Why 10? But guests can get up and dance only when stricter Safe Pass rules are in place. You may dance, but only when stricter Safe Pass rules are in place. Namely, establishments allowing in only vaccinated or recovered guests, but explicitly not accepting negative rapid or PCR tests. The measures came after daily cases passed the 1,000 mark last week. Cases. We've talked about this quite a bit here over the past 9, 10 year, I guess 14 months really, about what that word actually means. Anyway, can't talk about it here anymore. The measures came after the daily cases passed the 1,000 mark last week, while infections weeks prior had gradually jumped from double into triple digits following reports of chains of infection. So everyone, people are reporting surges in cases. While the decree was initially published in Greek on Monday late afternoon, an English full version is also expected to be available, so make sure that everyone can see it. The government has been on an information campaign since late last month to boost vaccinations among young adults, while incentives and counter-incentives toward that goal have also been announced. Health officials and experts said vaccines not only could protect people from serious illness, but they were also the only way to get quickly back to normal. The latest data were taken into account, according to the health ministry, with Monday's decree saying 70% of eligible persons have received their first dose by the date of July 18th, with 60% having 2 doses. So, I can't really make a lot of commentary about this, but we're going to, like I said, we're just going to take a trip around the world and see what's going on, because there's some interesting stuff here. If you thought in the United States you were free from this, you were wrong. More from Cyprus, the way the coronavirus Safe Pass is in effect in Cyprus could be legally contested, say some experts, and they're saying that this Safe Pass policy that's in effect in Cyprus since July 9th could be legally contested, according to a law professor, Dr. Konstantinos Kouropis, I hope I said that correctly, who teaches at Frederick University, told Philae News that, to begin with, medical information is both sensitive and personal, and that national and European law prohibit its processing. This view contradicts recent arguments presented by the island's personal data commissioner before the green light was granted for the current Safe Pass. The point that's being made here is, the question is this: is it appropriate? Is it legal? Is it moral for someone to be compelled, to be forced in a certain sense, to reveal information about their health? What medical treatments they've had or not had? Is that lawful? The professor also explained that the processing of personal data is permitted. That means that just processing, they're just saying the use of it, the dissemination, the spreading of it, the making public of it, personal data, is permitted when certain conditions are met, such as serving the public interest in combating disease. Now, is that something that's constitutional? Or is that something that a man or woman, or let's just say a leader, has suggested? This must be proportionate and necessary in a society. In this case, he argued, the legality of SafePass control by business executives is questionable, explaining that a business owner cannot have competent state authority. He pointed out that according to the legislation, once the heads of various establishments and companies become responsible for checking this certificate, then they are called personal data protection officers. Now, we talked about this here before. This has to do a little bit with HIPAA, and people wonder about HIPAA and the HIPAA laws were put into place to protect your privacy. I don't know about in this country, but in the United States anyway. Put in place to protect your privacy, your medical information. But it wasn't HIPAA doesn't protect your medical information necessarily from other people, only from those people who might want to access it through the computer systems, through the data systems, as a way to market to you or to find out things about you for whatever reason. So HIPAA it's not necessarily there to protect you from the guy who has a restaurant downtown. It's just interesting. I was reading about this last week and realized that I had a misunderstanding about what HIPAA was really about. But let's not go too deep into that. I'm not here to make any proclamations about that at all. Just be careful here. Just can't say very much over here. It says, and this means that a series of questions should be answered, he added, such as what the obligations of the person in charge are. So the person asking for this information, have you been vaccinated? Would you show me your SafePass, please? Who's the person in charge? And where is this data stored and for how long? Who is the person that's in possession of this information? At the same time, the rights of the subjects should be clarified. He argued that even if it is accepted that there is a legal basis, the issue of proportionality is highly questionable and that the framework of the decree is incomplete. So pushback, a little bit of pushback, as you would hope would be there. Another piece here from a news outlet in the area. Cyprus issues the blanket rule for SafePass. Rules, by definition, cover supermarkets and bakeries, but exceptions for necessity goods are still unclear, said the health minister, as he announced stricter measures in the Republic of Cyprus, which make this SafePass a requirement across the board, but questions still remain over supermarket, bakeries, and other shops. In other words, can you go buy food yourself? So as mentioned earlier, this was a package of new measures to curb the pandemic. It's put in place last Friday. Put into force today, July 20th. So ostensibly that means that it has the force of law at this point. I'm not so sure about that, but does it really have the force of law, or are these arbitrary mandates? The decision was taken by the cabinet after taking into account suggestions by experts regarding any additional measures to limit the spread of the virus. Measures include the suspension of summer camps by no later than July 23rd, the introduction of the SafePass requirement in all indoor and outdoor areas where more than 20 people gather, as we saw earlier, at any time, including workers. And this would be in effect until July 31st. And the requirements for SafePass and public services in the wider state and private sectors, banks, local administration, public transport, passenger ships, etc., will be everywhere. You can be sure of that. So the minister did not clarify whether these rules would apply in supermarkets and bakeries and mini markets. People from the industry responding by saying that clarification should be coming by this weekend to know whether or not people would be able to go shopping for food. So this is interesting, right? The agenda for the 21st century is here. And I don't know how many of us predicted or thought that it would appear this way. Anyone who says they knew it was coming this way, I don't know. I'm not so sure. This has been a surprise. Other rules included raising the limit from 350 to 450 people at indoor venues, provided that all people would be fully vaccinated. So you can have 350 to 450 people if they're fully vaccinated, which raises questions that we can't discuss here, of course, but there you have that. Or if you've been infected with COVID-19 in the last 6 months, which means that you now have a negative rapid or PCR test. Meaning that a negative test would not be accepted, would not be good enough. You would have to have a vaccine or some proof that you had COVID in the last 6 months. Interesting, right? A test wouldn't work for you there. There's all kinds of this is being handled different ways all around the world, and that's what we're looking at here today. Trying to figure out how to think about this stuff. And more about the dancing and entertainment venues that we've already seen. Of course, the Cypriot expert says here, just wear the damn mask. That's what people are saying. Just local experts, stay on message. Staying with the campaign for vaccines, but clarify more is needed beyond the jab. So local health experts calling on the public to be vigilant because the case numbers have passed the 1,000 mark for the first time daily. With a member of the government's advisory team telling Cypriots, these are people who live in Cyprus, to wear the damn mask. Just wear the mask. What people are saying. That's what the government's advisory team is saying anyway. He says it takes patience, adherence to self-protection measures and protocols, and avoiding gatherings. We say this time and time again that people who are vaccinated still need to wear the damn masks. So that's from the government's advisory team in Cyprus. In other words, as we just mentioned a moment ago, nowhere in Romans 13 does it say to just do whatever they tell you to do. That there is an authority higher. It says even if we say this, they go and get infected and then blame the vaccine for not working properly. Once again, join us Wednesday at 6 p.m. if you want some full commentary on this. And then also Friday at 6 p.m. if you want to really have some fun. On the website, armoroftruth.net. But when asked if the government's advisory team would recommend new, stricter measures, the government advisory team said the team did not have this particular discussion, while adding that if such a step was needed, then you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. They said it takes patience, adherence to self-protection measures and protocols, and avoiding gatherings. Another member of the advisory team said everyone is tired and angry, and it would be impossible to stick to measures. She's probably right about that. Another member said, that calling on all members of the public to do their fair share in any way they can. To come together and do the right thing. Wear the damn mask, they're saying. Continued on by saying that's only if each and every person adopts and implements what we have been saying day in and day out, such as avoiding crowds, especially in indoor spaces, using a face mask properly, and encouraging vaccinations across all age groups that are now eligible. So these are the answers that they're proposing. These are the restrictions that they believe will work in Cyprus. and it is unprecedented, at least in the modern age. All right, there are people in the world who have experienced this kind of thing before, and if you know your history, you know who they are, and you know that we can't really talk about that here either. But the question is here, are you ready for your daily propaganda? Is this just Cyprus? What is the news media telling us about all this? Can you trust it? The news media withholding, I'm going to share some comments from you from an article written by Michael Hoodman. And this article came from off of gotquestions.org, and it's a good one. It's interesting the way he says this, because it's what most of us are thinking. The news media withholding relevant information from the public is not new. Presenting the news in such a way as to push people a certain direction is not new. In other words, social engineering as a main purpose of mainstream media. This is not new. They're just getting closer to perfecting it now. Presenting the news in such a way as to push people a certain direction, of course. Proclaiming propaganda disguised as news is also not new. None of it's new. He says, I suppose the only thing that is new is how painfully obvious this now is. He says, we as Americans are getting a taste of what people in other countries have experienced for decades, where, quote unquote, freedom of the press originally meant that the press will tell us the truth even if the government opposes that truth. Now, that's what freedom of the press means, that the press would tell the truth regardless. Evidently, freedom of the press now means that the press is free to warp the news until it will influence their listeners to the outlet's preferred viewpoint. Michael Hoodman says here, I would encourage you to take what you hear and read in the news with a grain of salt. That would be insulting to salt. Maybe we should just always assume the news is lying to us, a sort of reverse of innocent until proven guilty. In many instances, both the conservative and progressive news outlets are lying to us, and the truth is somewhere in between. And that's what I would like to suggest here to you today, even with what we're reading here about what's going on in the world. That's why I did the poll question. We hear from people like our brother Daniel in Slovakia, giving us an eyewitness report from the ground in Slovakia, what's really happening, his personal experience, and the others in the comments that we just read. And that is what we do this series called Tracking Dystopia for. It's not on YouTube anymore because it really can't be, because we're getting the true experiences of people around the world. So far, we've got South Africa, Johannesburg to be more specific. We've got Berlin, Germany. We've got those two experiences. Soon we'll have an experience from Sweden. And we'll have another report ready for you from South Africa again. Summer did another interview today with one of our contacts in South Africa. If you've been paying attention, you realize that South Africa is in turmoil at the moment. Seems to be, according to what the news is saying, but what's it about? So we contact these people and find out, what are they actually seeing on the ground? Is it what the news is reporting? So if you want to hear these reports from right there on the ground, these are going to be available over on the website at armoroftruth.net as well. For now, you can check them out over on Odyssey, the Brad from Carolina channel on Odyssey. The Tracking Dystopia series is available there, as is Matrix Override series, which is also it's still available here on YouTube, which is a personal experience, testimony of Summer's experience coming to faith and experiences living in Indonesia, and doing business there, and also experiences in school. I encourage you to check that out too, if you want a personal experience of growing up American, moving to another part of the world, and seeing things from another perspective. Michael Houdinick goes on here and says, in many instances, both the conservative and progressive news outlets are lying to us. It's refreshing to hear someone in a mainstream sense anyways, more or less mainstream sense. It's Christian, but, writing for a mainstream outlet here, saying what's true. In many instances, both the conservative and progressive news outlets are lying to us. And the truth is somewhere in between. That's what I want to suggest to you that we need to be aware of. Thank goodness that we have the internet. This great depository of truth without bias. Insert sarcastic and despondent moan here, right? Of course, that means because, yes, you can find actual truth on the internet, but what lens are you looking through? All right, we're dealing with the hyper-real world here, and we have to be aware of that too. He says here, I'm sorry if this post seems overly cynical. I'm just tired of being lied to. I simply want to be told the truth. What is even more frustrating than being lied to is the fact that most people don't recognize the propaganda that is masquerading as news. Even worse yet, many people do not care. He says here, maybe this can be a reminder to us all, that God is true and every man a liar. And that's never been more evident, and that is an application to take for us today. That's Romans 3:4. Let God be true and every man a liar. God's word is truth from Psalm 119, John 17:17, and God does not lie. Numbers 23:19, Titus 1:2, Hebrews 6:18. And so we are all, to a certain extent, brainwashed by the content we expose ourselves to. This includes the truth movement or community. No such thing as a truth movement. People declaring truth is what it is. Whether it's actually true or not, that's where discernment comes in. He says, remember this, the truth of God's word is the only brainwashing that actually uses soap. It's the only brainwashing that actually will clean. Romans 12:2. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you can prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Don't be conformed to this world, is the point there. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. There's only one way to do that. It's to give your heart to the Lord. That's the only way to renew your mind. You can't do it yourself. Humanists, you can't. You might think you can. You like to think you can, but you can't renew your own mind. There's one path to that. Now, it's not just Cyprus. Canada. Let's check out Canada. We know that Canada seems to run about 10, 12 years ahead of the United States in what we could very carefully call socialism. More specifically, communitarianism these days. That's what we're moving closer toward. The pushing together of, communism and fascism as they come together in this new monster called communitarianism, where the corporate and then the labor forces have come together to take control. So there's a process called ArriveCAN. Use ArriveCAN to enter Canada. It says exemption for eligible fully vaccinated travelers. This exemption is only available to travelers who are already eligible to enter Canada. Make sure you update your ArriveCAN mobile app. There we go. Contact tracing. Update your app to the latest version. Here you can click and find out if you can even enter Canada. And you can know that some of the stipulations are going to be, let's just take a look at this one. They're going to be similar to what we just saw in Cyprus. Here are some exemptions for eligible fully vaccinated travelers. This exemption is only available to travelers who are already eligible to enter Canada, who arrived after 12:01 a.m. on July 5th. Foreign nationals aren't eligible to enter Canada to visit or for tourism at this time. There are exemptions if you've been fully vaccinated, and there are some stipulations on that. Flights from India have been suspended. All right, now, more from Canada. Automatic notifications. It's just a fraud alert here. Be cautious of third-party fraudulent web pages and apps that may be posing as a ArriveCan, asking you for payment. This is actually very useful here. This is a big problem out there. I did a video on scams around the coronavirus early last year. The top 10 scams that were out there. People taking advantage of the fear at the moment, taking advantage of people who were in fear and didn't, for example, one of the scams was people, companies going around saying that they would come test your HVAC system or your heat pump or your air conditioner or your heating system. And they would come test it to make sure that it was safe. For a couple $100, they would test it to make sure it's safe. And of course, they would find something that needed to be tested. No, it's not safe. We need to put in these filters. We need to scrub and clean your, a lot of scams are going on like that. That's not the worst scam. At least those people were actually coming out and doing something, even though they weren't really doing anything. They did show up to do something. There were a lot of other scams where people, fraudsters trying to get people's information. You can check out that video on the channel. It's out there somewhere. It has survived. I'm pretty sure that one's still out there. I don't know if YouTube removed it or not. It should be there. The top 10 coronavirus scams. I actually got hold of some audio of some phone calls. Some of these fraudsters making phone calls to try to scam people out of money or information or both. So anyway, here on this website at canada.ca, of course, Public Health Services, you can find out what are the requirements for you to be able to enter Canada, and they're very similar, although not. Now, this is just to enter the country. This is not. We're not talking here about how you're restricted and moving around within Canada. But here we go. Let's look at this. France has new vaccination requirements. If we're going to stay in the theme of French speakers, France has new requirements. Could these work in the United States? Well, I think it's inevitable. Okay, so what's going on in France, and why are people so upset? People have been, raising Cain. They've gotten upset. They're, in some cases, rioting. Protesting. They're protesting. Proof of vaccination is now required to enter cafes and restaurants and other public spaces in France. Could this help the United States to contain its ongoing pandemic? It says here vaccine passports have been in use in the United States as early as the 19th century. Spanish flu. However, today, vaccine passports or similar credentials are likely to remain voluntary. Well, we certainly hope so. Starting in August, anyone in France, though, entering a cafe, restaurant, shopping center, a hospital, or taking a long-distance train will have to show a special health pass. President Emmanuel Macron said on July 12th, so last week, the increased restrictions in public spaces are aimed at containing the rapid spread of the highly transmissible Delta variant in the country. The health pass, known officially as the European Union Digital COVID Certificate. Here's the site for that. Here's the EU Digital COVID Certificate from the European Commission. This entered into application on July 1st, 2021, where European Union citizens and residents will be able, this is a service, right, made available to you for your benefit and for your safety, according to the EU. It allows the service, of course, gives citizens and residents the ability to have their digital COVID certificates issued and verified across the European Union. And on this website, you can learn how to get your certificate from your national health authority by selecting your country on the interactive map. It's going to make it as easy as possible. This certificate shows that you have either been vaccinated or received a negative test result or recovered from COVID-19. As you saw in Cyprus, a negative test result was not going to be good enough. So that's a new development. That's something that's new that we see going on with this. So, we're just reading the news here. YouTube, algorithm, human being who monitors this channel. I don't know. We're not telling anybody what to do about anything. Just reading the news, seeing what's going on around the world. There is no medical information here at all. So features of this European Union digital pass certificate or whatever, it's digital and it can be in paper format as well. So you might think, well, I'm not going to have a smartphone. I'll just get rid of my smartphone and then I won't have the digital. Well, no, there's also a paper form. I think Daniel's dealt with that also in Slovakia, where they actually had to carry around a piece of paper when he was out exercising, in case someone stopped him to ask him. He would have to show his papers. Interesting, right? Some of the other features are they're enabled for QR codes. They're free of charge, of course. They can be in whatever language you need it to be in. And, of course, the European Commission here says that they are safe and secure. I would like for them to define what they mean by the word safe and the word secure. Why do I say that? Well, just to think about this for a second. Whenever a government or, let's just say whenever a tyrant, just an example, any tyrant, not anyone specific, tells you, we're here to secure you. We want to make you safe and keep you secure. Always remember that the most safe and secure people in the world are the people who live inside prisons. That's what ultimate security and safety looks like. Just keep that in mind. How can citizens get the certificate? Well, it goes on to tell here. I don't think we need to go into that too much. But back over here to just France. Anyone over the age of 12, similar to Cyprus, will be required to show this pass to visit a movie theater, a museum, a live theater, a theme park, or cultural center starting on July 21st. So that would be tomorrow. Within 48 hours of Macron's announcement, more than 2 million vaccination appointments were booked. So it worked. It's successful. Well, this, according to the news that we remember, do you trust it? Is this true? Is this really what's happening? Well, we'll just read it and see what they're saying. Many French citizens took to the streets to protest the new rules, however, saying that these rules, that this pass encroached on their freedoms and discriminated against the unvaccinated. Now, there's an interesting concept, isn't it? Is there a such thing as discrimination against the unvaccinated? It doesn't seem like that's something that's talked about very much in the mainstream news, something that we talk about out here in this realm quite a bit. To date, France has fully vaccinated almost 40% of its population. Now, this is interesting considered if you can take the numbers seriously, which I don't know if you can. I know some numbers you can't, but I don't know. What about these? It's in comparison to Cyprus, where they said they had 70% of its population. We'll just say anyone above 12 years old, I think, is how they're gauging this. 40%, only 40% in France. They're not real. Seem to be real excited about taking part in this. But it says here I think it's the goal in the United States was to get to 70% of the adult population. So that wasn't reached by July 4th. That was President Biden's goal, was to get there by the 4th of July. And so immediately after, they had a campaign to get everyone excited about going out and participating. But France, almost so not even 40% of its population. Interesting. The United States is facing a similar surge of the Delta variant with a similar vaccination rate. Is the country ready for a Macron-style requirement? Well, probably. Probably not. Honestly, I don't know. Look around. If you live in the United States, just look around. Does it look like anyone's real excited to head back into lockdowns? Or once again, we just can't talk about this very much here. But we'll look at these stories. Now, once again, I'll invite you Wednesday at 6 p.m. for the uncensored version of all this at armoroftruth.net. And, of course, Friday at 6 p.m. where myself and Days of Noah will talk about whatever we want to talk about in the way we want to talk about it, in the words we want to use. So what about vaccine passports? It says here, not new in the U.S. It has occurred before, so this is not a new thing. Dr. Bruce Lee, be like water, not that Bruce Lee, professor of health policy and management at City University of New York, is that right? Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy, said vaccine passports in the United States are not a new concept. Let's get rid of that. So let's make this a little easier for you to see out there. Vaccinations have stalled in the United States despite rising number of cases. There's that word again, cases. What's a case? Would you like for someone to define for you what a case is? Is a case just a positive test result? If that's the case, then what is a test? There's questions. We can't talk about them here. So far, it says proof of vaccination is now required to enter cafes, restaurants, and other public spaces in France, as we just read. Could this help the United States to contain, this purportedly ongoing pandemic? Vaccine passports have been in use in the United States as early as the 19th century. However, today, vaccine passports or similar credentials are likely to remain voluntary. Well, we can pray for that. Starting in August, they're talking this. Anyone in France entering a cafe, we just read this, is going to have to show a pass. This is what Macron put into policy and perhaps into law. He announced it. I don't know if it's law, but this man announced it. Does that make it a law in France? I don't know about France's law. I don't know. But just because a man says something, let's not all assume that that's law all of a sudden. You still have a supreme authority that is above the man. The increased restrictions in public spaces are aimed at containing the rapid spread, of course, of the Delta variant. Health pass, which you just talked about. Now, Bruce Lee, Dr. Lee, professor of health policy, once again, he says, there is a precedent for vaccine passports in the sense that if you want to attend school, you need to get immunized. He's right. I remember. You probably out there remember, many of you, if you're a little older. Maybe you were born in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. You remember, and today, I'm sure, especially, I don't know, my daughter's in her 20s now. I don't know what they're requiring to show up at school today, but I had to show a vaccine card to be able to go to public school. Public school. Yeah. Many of us do, don't we? We have to be there. We didn't know any better, did we? Our parents didn't know any better. We know better now. But anyway, so it's not new. When I went to college, I had to show that little card that said I had these. And listen, it's very interesting because I look at my vaccination card. It's got like 4 or 6 vaccinations on it. Today, it's like a booklet. I mean, you got 3 dozen shots before you're even 3 years old or something. It's quite a lot. I mean, and so, again, we can't talk about this here. I encourage you, if you'd like to hear more about that, and chronic illness, and why are so many of us chronically ill, and why are peanut allergies? Where did that come from? Where did egg allergies come from? Why is that a thing? On Patreon. Over on Patreon, I have a video over there for you where we get into what's known as the science. Yeah, the science, not the scientism. Anyway, let's don't go down that path too far. He said it's not like these discussions are completely out of the blue. In fact, vaccine passports were in use in the United States as early as the 19th century, reports Time magazine. Yes, of course, it's been, they're calling them passports. We didn't call them, we didn't call that a passport back then. It's just called your vaccine record or whatever. You need to show it to be able to go to this public school. Travelers entering the country had to show proof that they were vaccinated against smallpox, for example. And this could be a vaccination certificate or a vaccination scar on your arm. Well, imagine if that was the case today, that all you had to do was show a scar on your arm. Can you imagine how many people would scar their arm? They might also be allowed in if they had distinctive scarring on their skin showing that they had survived smallpox. Now, I don't know enough about that part of our history to comment effectively on it, but I think we should be cautious about what we think we know. Later, proof of smallpox vaccination was a requirement for many types of employment, especially ones in confined work environments such as factories, mines, and other industrial workplaces. Some social gatherings and clubs asked people to show proof of vaccination before they could attend. And as I just said, public schools also required students to be vaccinated against smallpox, as they do today with measles, mumps, and other. That's what I had. I remember measles, mumps, rubella. You get tetanus shots, Pretty common. Thanks to the smallpox vaccination program, the last natural outbreak trusted source of this disease in the United States occurred in 1949. The World Health Organization declared trusted source smallpox eradicated from the world in 1980. They declared it eradicated from the world. Of course, it certainly does exist in laboratories. It's there. So it's not eradicated from the world completely. Even with America's long history of requiring people to be vaccinated in order to enter certain public spaces today, there's still often politicized resistance to the idea. It says there has already been some political leaders in the U.S. railing against the possibility of vaccine passports, said Dr. Lee. Richard M. Carpiano, Ph.D. and professor of public policy at the University of California, Riverside, said part of the opposition to vaccine passports stems from many Americans not being used to thinking about what's best for the community versus the individual. I invite you, my friends, to the agenda for the 21st century, because that's the mindset. It's not about you and your individual rights and needs. It's about the community. All right, that works in a family. That works in a small community of people, for sure. But that's not going to fly when it's coming down from a centralized authority who's 1,000 miles away from you or more. The idea of putting the community before the individual is something that comes from the bottom up. It comes from the community, not from the tyrant 2,500 miles away. Says a lot of times the discussion about mandates gets spun as I should be able to do whatever I want. But that's really not the basis of our social contract in this country, which is you're free to do things that you want provided they don't harm other people. Now, he's just taken the libertarian motto and twisted it on its head a little bit there with that. That's, yeah. In my opinion, the proper way to look at that is a person should be free to take his own risks. A person should be free to access all of the information for himself and then decide what risk he wants to take. That's not what we see today. It says, in difficult times, you need to be able to turn to experts who understand and can help strengthen your mental well-being. He says, we're here for you. Now, I agree with that. You shouldn't be able, you need to turn to experts at certain times. But who are those experts? Right? Who are they? Might they have an agenda of some kind. Once again, when we get into talking about technocracy, we can't say too much about that over here. I'll say as much as I can, but that's what technocracy is. It is government by experts, not by your elected officials. It's the experts will be telling your elected, so-called elected officials what to do and how they must proceed. I would like to remind you, that there is a supreme law in the land still, and it is above what all the people are saying. Policies are not laws. Mandates are not laws. Opinions, announcements are not laws. You have to, especially, as an American, you need to understand what the actual authority is. All right, I'm getting close to the line, so let's just pull it back a little bit. Biden administration said in April that there won't be a national vaccine passport. Do you believe that? Leaving it up to the states, companies, and schools to decide how to handle the requirements. Now, of course, what this means is government's not going to do it, but the private sector will do it. And in a sense, once again, communitarianism, the agenda for the 21st century is when the public and the private merge. That's not good for you. It's not good for you when the government is merged with private corporations. It's not good for you. Then you don't have government anymore. You have governance. You have the community. What's best for the community becomes the policy. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg later clarified that the federal government would support local efforts. It says if a company, a business wants to take steps to keep their workers and their passengers safe, I would think that from a government perspective, we want to do everything we can to encourage that. And that's certainly our view at the federal level. As with many things related to the pandemic, this has led to a mix of state responses. Over the past year, we've been seeing 50 different types of policies getting rolled out, said Carpiano, particularly when it comes to vaccinations and public health. Of course, South Dakota seems to have been, at least at first, one of the places where men and women were allowed to assess the risk for themselves and act accordingly. Just for an example, and it seemed like every state had a different response. Where I am, it was very serious, a lot of measures and mandates and policies, no laws, but mandates and suggestions and announcements for the first 6 to 9 months. And then the people just kind of stopped paying attention to it. And it seemed to sort of start. Now, even in North Carolina, when you go into the large cities, large concentrations of populations or population centers, you see the same thing you might see in Cyprus or some of France. But people are doing that in those areas in large part. For example, I saw a little documentary the other day where a man was going around and asking people, why are you still wearing your mask outside? He was in New York. Because even the CDC, it said that I don't know if I can even say this here, but according to the CDC's website, it was very, very difficult, almost impossible for transmission to occur outside. So he was asking people, why are you wearing it? The answers were amazing. None of the answers I can remember. Well, let's just say one of the answers was because it's what we're supposed to do. Was one of the answers I heard. Another was because I want to stay alive. And on. And it seemed to take on after that, quite a few political. There were responses that seemed to be coming from they were politically motivated. It's very, very interesting times we lived in. It says 19 states have banned vaccine passports with proposed bans in 7 additional states. I think Florida is one of these. Florida is one of these that has banned the vaccine passports, but I'm telling you, as I live here in North Carolina, it's just, and as I look at the reports that are coming out of Florida, they seem to be way more masked up, and there's more restrictions, self-imposed restrictions there than there are even here where I am. And we're in one of those states where The governor is all for the movement to oppress, shall I say. As I say here, many of these states are Republican-led, but the people still have power. You still have access to it. You just have to move together. State bans on vaccine passports also vary among states, with some like Arizona providing exemptions for healthcare professionals. Certain bans are already embroiled in lawsuits. In May, of course, here, as we just said, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill that prohibits businesses from requiring proof of vaccination. In response, Norwegian Cruise Lines sued the state, saying it can't safely resume sailing without knowing whether its passengers and crews are vaccinated against the virus. But is that true? He says we could see Norwegian Cruise Lines as a staff and passenger safety issue, said Carpiano, but it's also protecting their bottom line, according to him. They only need one bad cruise with an outbreak to hurt their business and leave a mark on the industry itself. And once again, we get back to the issue of what does this term outbreak mean? Does it simply mean high number of cases? And in that case, what does a case mean? And in that case, what does a test mean? We must be allowed to talk about this in public. What do these words mean? How is an outbreak declared? Majority of Floridians agree with the cruise industry. Over 76% said proof of vaccination should be mandatory for all cruises, or the decision should be made by individual cruise lines. So you can see, the point is here, people are divided on this issue, and that's good news. You don't ever see anything just completely blindly accepted. More about France from CNN, pretty much the same thing here in this article. Traveling to France during this pandemic, he says, what you need to know before you go. More of what we just read. The basics here, France has some of the most stringent restrictions in the world. Although it reopened to visitors in the summer of 2020, the country has been put back into lockdown twice since then, and one of the worst countries for lockdowns these days, it seems from the news anyway, would be Australia, and Sydney especially seems to be, their government really seems to be having a big time with all this. So we were talking about a little bit ago here. Well, here's some of the pushback. Protesters attacked Cyprus TV over these measures and vaccine. This is from France 24. Protesters against the measures and vaccines attacked a Cypriot television station and torched cars outside the building in Nicosia on Sunday evening. Police confirmed the incident at Sigma TV and said around 2,500 protesters went to the network after a larger protest outside the presidential palace against a COVID safe pass and forced vaccination. Someone from Sigma TV said this was a cowardly attack, and it took place on Sunday night outside our headquarters in the capital. Our headquarters was attacked by mobs who threw crackers and damaged our cars. I think crackers is probably some kind of explosive. I don't think it's saltines. An AFP reporter saw thousands of people in the area near Sigma TV in the capital of Nicosia carrying placards against the safe pass that has come into force earlier this week in the Republic of Cyprus. Another saw broken glass around the building, several broken windows, and 4 Sigma-branded cars in various states of damage, one completely burned out. So this is the new way, right? Riots and protests and protesting. Is it a riot? Is it a protest? It depends on what side of the political fence you're on, and it depends on who's in power at the time as to how a word is defined these days, even right down to how the word male is defined or female is defined. Depends on who's in power. Earlier in the evening, around 5,000 people demonstrated outside the presidential palace, and at the end of the protest, about half of them went to the Sigma television building. A car at the network was set on fire, and there was damage to the building, the police said. There were no immediate reports of arrests or injuries, however. Sigma TV said the police had entered the building to protect those working there. Which reminds me, let me just let you know about a little piece that I'm working on here. I think it might be okay to do on YouTube as well. It's going to be sort of related to this, but not about pandemic issues. Not exactly, but indirectly it'll be about these issues. I've been doing research recently, and you can see a video here on this channel titled, "Who's Protecting Your Freedoms?" You had better be. And we're going to look at the police. Now, listen, I'm not an anti-police guy at all, but I'm going to look at this thing the way it is. And we're going to just look at, what did a police officer look like in the 1980s or the 1990s? I mean, physically, a picture of a police officer or several police officers from different parts of, let's just say, the United States or Canada. What did a police officer look like in the 80s and 90s compared to what a police officer looks like today? I submit to you that today it looks like we have paramilitary troops on our streets, and I'm not anti-police. I'm just making an observation. Why is that? Why is there so much friction between the public and the police today? Is that organic? Is that something that's come about naturally? Well, the research I'm doing at the moment, I want to put together a little piece and bring to you guys here. And we're just going to consider, has the training, what's caused this? What's caused this change where it used to be, the communities and the police are happy to work together. When I was a kid in my own community, the chief of police would drive up and down the streets, and if he saw a kid out in the yard, he would throw bubble gum in the yard. That's how it was. He would get out and talk to you. And he did not look like he was about to go to war. He just had on a shirt and a badge and some pants that matched and some shiny shoes probably. And he had an old Chevy Caprice that he drove around with a bubblegum machine on top. And we respected him. Not today. Today there are tanks and military vehicles rolling through your city because you need to be served and protected. Once again, I encourage you to look deeper at the words protection and safety. And what do they actually mean? So that'll be coming up here. That's probably safe for you too, because I'm sure they don't mind you talking about the police today. Once again, I'm not anti-police at all. I appreciate law and order, but I appreciate law, the law, and that means the supreme law of the land, not this thing that we see happening around us today. More on that later. From RT, if you can trust what they're saying anyway, but from Russia Today. Now we're going into another part of the world. We're going into Indonesia, to the Pacific Ocean, parts of Asia. Tourist hub Bali went up in Indonesia's is swept up in Indonesia's harsh lockdown despite a 71% vaccination rate. So over 70% the Balinese have been vaccinated, as of course, once again, as infections spike, as cases rise. Let's see if we can make this a little, there we go. Hundreds of roadblocks and checkpoints have been erected across Indonesia as authorities attempted to enforce a harsh lockdown aimed at curbing the spread. Now, we'll continue with this article here, but we also have word Summer does from contacts in Bali, where they're saying that you can't come or go, without this. I shared this article. I can't remember. I think it was on the Uncensored show where I was reading to you, sharing with you about what's going on in Indonesia, where if you show up there and test positive, you will have to go to a government facility at your expense. So you go to what we'll call a COVID camp, but you'll have to pay for it. And you have to stay there for 14 days. At least. So this is weird. This is not looking good here. They say here, quote, "We're setting up patrols in 21 locations where typically there are crowds, so to keep people from gathering." This was the head of Indonesia's National Traffic Police. Where there are street stalls and cafes, we will close those streets, maybe from around 6 p.m. until 4 a.m. So a very distinct curfew in place there. Ostensibly, the idea being to keep people from gathering where they can't be seen. The beefed up patrols and roadblocks will focus on the islands of Java, the country's most populous, where the national capital of Jakarta is located, as well as in Bali, a common tourist destination. Some 21,000 police officers and soldiers will enforce the new restrictions, according to a police spokesman cited by Reuters. They will also administer random coronavirus tests at checkpoints. They will also administer random tests at checkpoint. The move comes soon after President Widodo declared a new lockdown earlier on Friday, set to last into late July, though it could be extended, and you can bet that it will be. The order requires all quote-unquote non-essential businesses to shut their doors, while Java and Bali-based students will have to learn from home if possible. Parks, malls, indoor restaurants, and places of worship, of course, among other public spaces, have also been closed. Some exceptions were made for those who were both vaccinated and test negative for the virus, as they were permitted to travel long distance in the affected areas. I think we can see this testing negative to soon be irrelevant. It'll be either you're vaccinated or you're not. We saw it. It's in Cyprus. That's how it is in Cyprus now, who seems to be the bleeding edge of this movement now. Indonesia is currently facing one of Asia's worst outbreaks, tallying more than 20,000 cases each day in recent weeks. Man, that's a lot of people. I don't know what that word cases means necessarily, but that's a lot of people. Whatever it means. Many believe this is linked to this, of course, this new Delta variant, first observed in India. And that only accounts for those verified by testing. The country has smashed its own daily infection record for the last 12 days, according to Reuters, reporting 25,830 cases on Friday, as well as a high of 539 fatalities. Many questions to be asked about these numbers. Many questions that we won't ask here. While a national vaccination drive is underway, largely relying on a shot developed by China's Sinovac, did you know we have new vaccines available today? In case you didn't know, yeah, many new ones around the world available today. Only about 5% of Indonesia's 260 million strong population has been fully immunized against the virus, according to figures compiled by Our World in Data. And that amounts to about 13.7 million people. So, this is only about 5% of Indonesia's 260 million, but it was 70% of those in Bali. Given Bali's popularity with tourists and its status as an economic hub, the immunization efforts have focused heavily on the island, where around 71% of residents have been vaccinated so far. So you see there in Bali, 70%. But overall in Indonesia, it's only about 5% have been fully immunized. Amid a recent spike in cases, seeing about 200 per day, the island remains closed to international tourism. We're talking about Bali here, including for vaccinated sightseers, allowing only Indonesian nationals and those with special permits to travel there. It boasts a population of some 4.3 million. Since the pandemic first emerged in late 2019, Indonesia has seen some 2.2 million cases and nearly 60,000 deaths. And of course, if you think you want to travel there now, you'll be taken to a government facility for 2 weeks. That is, according to that article I read, if you test positive, you'll be taken to a government facility for 2 weeks. Not a hotel, no longer hotels, a government facility. If you want to see that article, go watch the uncensored video on the website that's available over there right now. Please go over there, click on it, give us some traffic over there. We're trying to grow that site up a little bit. All right, so we're getting close to the end here, folks. Once again, Bali reopening to foreign tourists has been delayed. More of the same on Indonesia from Al Jazeera. BBC reporting same thing. Indonesia announces lockdown in Java and Bali as cases surge. And from CBS News, Green Pass, which is a COVID travel app, is smoothing travel for Europeans. As we got our message from our brother Daniel in Slovakia a few minutes ago about this, but also in the United States. Get digital proof of your COVID-19 vaccination or negative test results with and prove that you're clean with the Excelsior Pass. In New York, have access to the information you need at the touch of your fingertips with Excelsior Pass. New York's voluntary, is it? And secure, is it? Way to retrieve proof of COVID-19 vaccination or negative test results. Excelsior Pass empowers New Yorkers to retrieve and easily store a digital form of vaccine or negative test credentials so that you don't have to worry about misplacing or damaging your vaccination card. We don't want that to happen. That would be bad, I guess. Excelsior Pass supports a safe reopening of New York by providing a free, fast, and secure way to present digital proof of vaccination or test results, or just to show that you're valid, that you're accepted. Think of it as a mobile airline boarding pass. Think of it as something other than what it is. Right? That's the message. Think of it as something else. Don't think of it as a passport. Think of it as something else. Think of it as something that you're just proving that you done this. You can store your pass digitally on your smartphone with the Excelsior Pass wallet app, available for free from the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, of course. You can also print your pass from the Excelsior Pass website and add it to your smartphone's native wallet. Participating businesses and venues can scan and validate your pass to ensure that you meet any requirements for entry. Along with your pass, you'll be asked to show a photo ID that shows your name and birth date to verify that the pass belongs to you. Listen, folks, I'm not making any claims, no medical claims here at all. What I will say is going around and giving your name and showing your ID to every person that asks is not a great idea. That's not freedom. That's not a good sign. All right. And even when the police in the streets are asking you for ID, once again, as Christians, we're called to obey the authority, but we're not called to do whatever the authority says. And we do have an expectation of privacy still in this country. This is not good. Being asked to give your name and your birthday and and to tell them where you sleep at night everywhere you go, this is not smart. It's not good. This is a bad sign. So I just wanted to show you this because it's also, here in New York. Once again, it says, as of June of this year, the state's mandatory restrictions have been lifted, coinciding with 70% of New Yorkers having been vaccinated. So these numbers are fairly consistent with France, standing out from the crowd with less than 40% vaccinated. Why is that? I don't know. I'm not making any claims at all. I'm just showing you what the news says. Got that, YouTube? No, just reading the news. And Indonesia, 260 million people, only 5% overall. Of course, though, in Bali, it's more like here, 70%. So this gives you, of course, major tourist spot, but, thousands of islands making up Indonesia. It's hard to get to all those people out there, and that's good for them, in my humble, unprofessional opinion. It says here, participation in the Excelsior Pass is voluntary. It's voluntary unless you want to go get a meal. And then it's mandatory. At businesses and venues where proof of vaccination or negative test is required, for example, at large indoor venues that seat over 5,000 people, individuals can always show alternate proof or results like another mobile app or paper form. And it's available in any language you might need. And Hawaii. Coming around the home stretch, Hawaii also. State of Hawaii, Safe Travels Hawaii program is a multi-layered process designed to mitigate the spread, of course, from trans-Pacific passengers arriving at airports and ports across the Hawaiian Islands. For anyone planning to travel to the Hawaiian Islands, it is important to be aware of new and enhanced State of Hawaii Safe Travels program and entry requirements prior to departure. Hear that? Yeah. I said too much. They've come to get us. This enhanced entry into Hawaii includes the mandatory State of Hawaii travel and health form, temperature screening at all Hawaii. It's not, I have to say this too, I don't think it's a great idea to go around letting everybody take your temperature wherever you go. I understand people are scared and they don't want to die, and I understand that, but we have to be careful about what we allow people to do to us and what we were willing to give up. So anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. Hawaii also has a unique set of protocols for you to show up and visit their part of the world. Is it necessary? Well, I can't comment on that here. They do have quarantine guidelines in Hawaii. If you arrive in Hawaii without a valid proof of whatever, that you've had a shot or you had the disease or something, you'll be subject to the State of Hawaii's strict 10-day mandatory self-quarantine. Okay, at least this one is a self-quarantine. And you'll need to adhere to the following guidelines. Under self-quarantine, you will not be allowed to leave the room at your place of lodging under any circumstances except for a medical emergency or to depart the state. If you're planning on staying in a short-term rental or vacation rental, be aware that individuals subject to Hawaii's 10-day mandatory self-quarantine are not allowed to stay in short-term rentals and vacation rentals in other parts of the island. Quarantine travelers are not allowed to rent a car in Hawaii for the duration of their self-quarantine. So this is not really a self-quarantine, is it? That's just a term. It doesn't mean anything. It is mandatory. Self-travelers who violate the terms of the 10-day mandatory self-quarantine will be prosecuted and may face fines of up to $5,000 and 1 year in prison. It's Hawaii for you. And what does that bring us to? Wow, there's a lot of action outside today. That brings us back here to the poll question that we asked today. We've got it updated. And what you just heard from Hawaii there, let's scroll down here and let's see what our brother in Slovakia, what Daniel from the YouTube channel Daniel Apologetics told us earlier today. After a year and a half without any chance to travel home to Norway, I'm finally going back, Lord willing, in 1 month. Going to visit family in Norway after a year and a half. But when he comes back to where he is currently in Slovakia a couple of weeks later, I'll have to report to police where I am. In short, my home will be a prison for 5 days before I'm allowed to go out at that point to get a PCR test, I assume at your own expense, and be declared. You have to. This test must be negative, of course. And here's the important part: police checks could occur regularly during this self-quarantine. He says, if I'm not at home, I will get a huge fine. Now that seems. Should they be using the term self-quarantine if this is what the police are going to check in on you? Get fined if you're not there. Let's see what's the polls showing us here so far. Once again, over 100 people have voted so far, and the question is this: is your town or city still under restrictions, lockdown of some sort? The answers are: my city is fully open with no restrictions, my city is open but still with some restrictions, or my city is currently in a lockdown. So 98% of you are reporting that you're living in an area that is no lockdown, little to no restrictions. 2% of you, which turns out to be about 3 to 3.5 of you out there, are living in a place that is under lockdown now. And let's look at some of the comments as we finish up here. Ned Livone Prayers says, my city is moving and grooving. No problems at the moment. Thank you, Jesus. That's from Big Ned down around San Antonio. Wave Fanatic says, Las Vegas is totally open, but may change soon due to the new numbers that are starting to look bad. And that's the story today. There seems to be a move. Pixie Doodle. Let's see. Justin DeVoe here says, the United Nations Blue Helmets are supposed to start door-to-door this Friday. Not sure if that's true or not. Justin DeVoe, where are you? Let us know where you are. Pop a comment in there. Brian Brown checks in from Columbus, Ohio, says no direct restrictions, but it's up to the business or property owner to set their own rules. Okay, I can deal with that. Most places say if you took the Jabberwocky, I like that. We'll just use that term from now on. You don't need a mask, and they don't ask for proof yet. Clandestine 2178 says, I wouldn't know. I never participated in this word that I can't say on this channel. Solomon Waffle says, open in Mid-South, USA. And that's where I am, Mid-South. South Atlantic states at least here in Western North Carolina, it feels and seems like nothing ever happened. And that's just honest. I understand it. So, I almost said that word that I can't say here, but things are going to be happening. We have to be on guard. It's a good time to be to be preparing for the power to be out, for your internet to be out. It's a good time to be preparing right now. Nobody's fear-mongering. It's just about being smart, being wise right now. All right, folks. If you remember, those of you who watched the live stream over on the website, we were going to give away 2 English Standard Version study Bibles, the ESV study Bibles. There's one. I don't have one with me. There's one back there on the shelf right there. We still have a few of these brand new in the cellophane still to give out. It's quite a value. It's $30, $35 to buy this thing if you check it on Amazon or christianbook.com. But if you were there watching it, I gave away a phrase. I said, if you'll send this phrase to hello@armoroftruth.net, the first 2 to do it. You have to remember, the email address was to hello@armoroftruth.net, not to armoroftruth@protonmail. So I have to follow the instructions. So if you were there, and we got 2. We did get our 2 that responded, and that is I won't say their full names for privacy, but Chris with a K and Aileen. You 2 have, we'll be getting in touch with you to get a mailing address. If you happen to be out of the United States, I may or may not be able to send it to you. It depends on where you are, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best in this case to get it to you. We'll get in touch with you and get your information. Once again, thanks to Amanda for sending us for filling up our mailbox. You can do that too. You can send us a message, a letter, a donation, whatever you want to do. Send it to Armor of Truth at P.O. Box 729, Hudson, North Carolina, 28638. It's a large P.O. box, and it can accept big boxes or small letters, either one. And once again, thanks to Amanda for that, and for your Bible. If you don't have a Bible, we're happy to send you a free Bible with a set, a little package of starter tracks. We call it a care package. If you want to do that, send us an email at hello@armoroftruth.net. In the subject line, say, I want a Bible. Make sure you do that in the subject line. That helps us to see your request. Say, I want a Bible. And then in the body of the message, just give us your mailing address, and we'll send one to you. We're happy to do it. We love to do it. That's part of our outreach here at this ministry that I am been called to head up here in Western North Carolina, called Armor of Truth Ministry. And having said all that, I thank you guys for joining us here on the Brad from Carolina YouTube channel today. We appreciate all your support, and we ask you, this is a full-time ministry, and this YouTube channel is just once again, I'll just make it clear, this YouTube channel is my personal YouTube channel, so I can say some things here that are just my personal opinion. But if you want to help support the ministry, which is spoken about here regularly, and we give you the opportunity to contact the ministry for Bibles and prayer requests and whatever through hello@armoroftruth.net, just to make that clear. You can support us if you like. There are links in the description to help you out. Hopefully, if Streamlabs is doing its job, those links are popping up in the live chat as we're going today. Otherwise, you can find those links in the description of this video or at the Armor of Truth website on the Contacts tab. Thank you for joining us today, my friends. I appreciate it very much. I've got to get off to a meeting now. I've gone over my time. God bless you, my friends. Remember, tomorrow at 6 p.m., armoroftruth.net for a uncensored live stream, just me and you. And then on Friday at 6 p.m., myself, Days of Noah, will be saying whatever we want. That will be on armoroftruth.net, not here on the YouTube channel, on armoroftruth.net. And then, of course, on Thursday, we'll be doing our Who is Jesus series. We'll be picking that up again on Thursday. Thank you, folks, for your well wishes over the last week and for checking up on us. God bless you all. We'll see you here on the YouTube channel on Thursday, but tomorrow at 6 p.m. at armoroftruth.net for a live stream. Join us and see what's new over there. God bless you, my friends. We'll see you next time.
Armor of Truth. Live. Faith is resistance.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth. Faith is resistance.